Whether you're daft enough to manage a building project yourself or you're going to be getting builders in, today I'm going to break down exactly how much our self-build extension cost. We have kept literally every single receipt from the entire build, and I've finally had a chance to go through everything and tally everything up. I'm not aware of anyone else daft enough on YouTube to go into the costs of an extension in as much detail as we're going to be going into it today, but hopefully it'll just set a few expectations. I'll also tell you what the cost per square metre worked out at and what you can potentially expect to pay, again, depending on whether you're going to manage the build yourself or you're going to get builders in. And I'm also going to break that down based on whether or not you're doing just a shell extension or obviously a fully finished product like what we have kind of here. So chill out, get yourself a cuppa, maybe a couple of biscuits even, if you're not on a New Year's diet. Got a lot to go over in this one. Hiya folks, and welcome back to the show, and a very happy new year as well. I hope you had a fantastic time. Lots planned for the channel for this year, so don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. Today, as I say, we're going to go into the costs of an extension on a UK property in quite a lot of detail, just to kind of set the record straight, because if there's one thing I've learned over the years is that trying to get a quote for a building project, it's just a free-for-all. It seems to be that a lot of builders just use random number generators. You've got people who are ultra cheap and they can't be making any money from it at all. And then you've got people at the other end of the spectrum who are clearly ripping people off. This isn't intended in any way as having a go at the builders either, because we've worked with some amazing builders and tradespeople over the years, but we've also been stung many, many, many times. If there's one thing that I've learned is that most builders don't really know how to charge projects. The ones that do are generally booked up forever, because to say that they're in short supply is an understatement. I've mentioned it before, I'm not a builder myself, but I have worked with the trades a lot over the years, mainly on the property maintenance side and also on the woodworking side, which is kind of my background. I absolutely do not advise managing a big construction project yourself unless you have really good experience of how houses are put together. But that said, there are plenty tradespeople out there who are capable of doing something like this themselves. And as I say, hopefully it'll also help you if you're planning on getting builders in, so you kind of understand how the whole process works. Now, before I tell you exactly what this extension cost us, I want to break down a few things so you understand how I'm kind of pricing things up. One of the first things that I want you to understand is a cost per square metre, because if there's ever a kind of ballpark estimate of what a building project is going to cost you, it's going to be to work out roughly the floor area of the build and then multiply it by a number, and that should give you a vague idea as to what the building project is going to cost you. Now, how you measure the area of a build in itself can be quite tricky. For example, in this build, our bedroom started off as being 6.5 square metres. It was basically the third bedroom. It was a tiny little room, and we've turned that into the main bedroom, which is now 17.5 square metres, including the ensuite. So in other words, it's 11 square metres bigger than it was before. Now, depending on the complexity of the build, some builders will charge you on the full 17.5 square metres because they might have had to do a substantial amount of work to the original room to bring it up to specs so that it can even join onto the new bit of the build. So they might charge you on the full 17.5 square metres, or they might just charge you on the extra bit they've added on, which would be 11 square metres. Our kitchen diner, where I'm sitting at the moment, it's roughly 8 metres in that direction and about 4 metres in that direction. In terms of internal floor area, it's about 27 square metres. That's an easy one to work out because this wasn't here before, so we have added 27 square metres onto the property. And then there's the garage. Well, the garage is the same size as the bedroom because all we've done is build on top of the garage. So that's 11 square metres as well. But in order to build the extension, we had to knock the garage down and rebuild it from the ground up with new foundations, new cavity walls and all that sort of thing. So although the garage was there before, I am going to include that floor area as part of the build. It wouldn't be a huge job to turn what is a new garage into a new room because it's got fully insulated cavity walls. So for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to refer to this build as being 49 square meters. Even though it's technically only 38 square meters bigger than it was before, but the 49 square meters is based on the bedroom being 11 square meters bigger than it was before. Directly underneath it, we've got the garage, which was also 11 square meters. And then, as I say, we've got the extension on the back here, which is 27 square meters. By the way, I'm referring to this project as an extension. That's generally what we call an add-on to a property in the UK. I know I've got viewers all around the world, so what would you call a project like this? In America, is it remodeling? I don't know, remodeling's more kind of a renovation as far as I'm aware, but if you extend a property in the States, do you call that an extension over there? What about in other parts of the world? Let us know what you would call this, where you've basically made a property bigger than it was before. So how much can you expect to pay per square metre in the UK for an extension? Well, I've done a bit of homework for you to save you trawling around the internet, and I'm obviously going to tell you what ours worked out as per square metre later on. But yeah, to say it's as clear as mud is a bit of an understatement. Let me show you. So the first website I checked said that the build cost should come out somewhere between £1,560 and £1,920 per square metre. Now, it's not particularly clear on some of these sites whether or not they're including VAT, so I've kind of included VAT on all of this. So I've basically uplifted everything by 20%. Everything that I'm going to be talking about on this video all includes VAT. So obviously that's quite a wide range of costs there, but if you take an average between these two, it's £1,740 per square metre. The next site I checked said between £1,800 and £3,000 per square metre. Another website said between £2,160 and £3,120 per square metre. And the most expensive site I found said that the build should come in somewhere between £2,400 and £3,360 per square metre, working out at an average of £2,880. Now, bearing in mind what I said before, that our build could either be considered as 38 square metres, which is how much bigger our house is, or it could be considered as 49 square metres if you include rebuilding the garage. And for the sake of simplicity, I've just worked it out based on this average figure here. So that means for website number 1, we're looking at somewhere between 66,000 and 85,000. Right up to somewhere between 109,000 and 141,000 for site number 4. Now obviously all of these figures here are just based on the average, but if you work it based on the lowest figure of £1,560 per square metre and the highest potential of £3,360, that gives us a potential price range of anything from £59,000 based on 38 square metres at the lowest square metre price of £1,560 up to potentially £164,000 based on 49 square metres at £3,360. So yeah, clearly this metric for working out the cost of the build isn't really going to work. So as a bit of a better metric, we had an extension carried out a little while ago. It was by a proper professional, reputable building company. They did an excellent job. We're really happy with them. Unfortunately, they now only do commercial work. But this was essentially a semi-detached property and we just wanted to build a bedroom on top of the garage. It wasn't entirely straightforward because it had to be underpinned and the roof structure all had to be tied in. But back in 2010 that came out at around £28,000 including VAT. So adjusting for inflation, around 2021 when we were getting the quotes in for this project, you would expect it to be around £38,500 for a simple bedroom over garage extension. Now obviously we're also building onto the back of the property, so just very roughly we'll say it's going to be double the size of the extension that we got done 10 or so years ago. So adjusting for inflation, you would expect it to be around £77,000. Working on a cost per square metre, that's about £1,570 per square metre, which is very close to the ballpark low-end quotes that we were getting before. But as I say, that was a really good, reputable company who did the work for us back in 2010. So I think for this part of the UK, that's not an unreasonable figure to aim for. Now, we've briefly talked about this on other videos, but we really struggled to get any quotes from builders at all. Most didn't get back to us at all. Some actually got back to us, but then just turned the work down. And some were quoting as much as £140,000, which would have worked out at about £2,800 per square metre. A complete non-starter because it would just put the entire property into negative equity. One of the builders who did actually bother to get back to us came in with a quote of $64,500, and they could start within a reasonable time frame as well. We thought we'd give them the benefit of the doubt, and as a bit of a kind of tester, we got them to do the studio room. That obviously turned into an absolute nightmare. More about that in a future video, but needless to say, they didn't get the time of day to even attempt this bigger project. One other company that we got to quote came in at around £120,000. We were very tempted to go with them, but when we told them about the £64,000 quote that we'd had, they said they couldn't even buy the materials for that, and that set off alarm bells because I already knew how much the materials were going to cost. So I didn't really appreciate being lied to from square one. It's not a great way to get a relationship off the ground, so yeah, they were knocked on the head as well. And by the way, all the prices I'm talking about here are just for the shell extension. So effectively, bare plastered walls, all the first and second fix electrics done, but no installation of bathroom or kitchen or finished flooring or anything like that. So with all of that in mind, and remember, we were expecting to pay around £77,000 for a bare shell extension. And quotes from builders were coming in from £64,000 to £140,000. By managing the build ourselves, our extension cost us, drumroll, our self-build extension cost us £47,940. That's the cost of the entire build from start to finish for a bare plastered shell ready for us to fit out. And that works out at roughly £978 per square metre. Now on top of that, obviously we've had various planning fees. They came out at £5,114. And that included architect drawings, structural engineer fees, the planning application fee, building regulations fees, our build over agreement with the water board, and a party wall award as well. These are all things that you need to sort out before a single brick is laid. And then of course there's the fit out costs, and really sky's the limit here. Bearing in mind that we're living in an age where it's not uncommon these days to spend 20 grand on a new kitchen. All of the fit out costs for the kitchen diner, the garage and the bedroom with ensuite came in at £16,094. I'll break down exactly what that included very shortly, but that means that the entire extension, including all of the planning fees, the entire build and all of the fit out, came to a grand total of £69,148.32. And that works out at just over £1,411 per square metre for the whole job. So before I give you the detailed breakdown of what we've actually spent our money on, with everything in mind that we've talked about so far, let's try and answer that age-old question of how much a house extension in the UK should cost, or the kind of ballpark figures that we should be looking at. So I'm going to add a new row in at the top here just to show what our extension actually cost us. Rather than low and high here, which is a little bit meaningless, I think we can reasonably say that the low price is what you would expect to pay for a shell extension, and the high price is reasonably what you could expect to pay for a fully fitted out project. We'll strip out sites 2 and 3 here just to kind of simplify things a little bit. Then instead of saying site 1 and 4 here, let's just say this is a low cost area of the UK and this is a high cost area of the UK, and that should be enough that you can kind of vaguely work out, depending on whereabouts you live, roughly the kind of ballpark figures that you should be looking at. And as such, I would say what we're looking at here with these 4 figures is quite reasonable depending on whereabouts you are and how much work needs to be done. And that means for the 49 square metre extension we had done, if we were paying builders to do it, it would have been reasonable to expect quotes to come in at anything from £76,000 for a low cost area shell build only. And if you're in a more expensive part of the UK and you want a fully finished project where you don't have to lift a finger, it's quite reasonable for an extension of this size to come in at around £164,000. But if you've come to this video trying to work out what a building project is likely to cost you in the UK, I would say this is a reasonable estimate based on prices in 2023. Obviously, as we go further down the line with inflation and everything else, that's only going to go up. So let's try and break this down a little bit and explain how we got to the 47,940 that it cost to actually build our extension. As I say, that excludes the planning fees, but I did briefly mention the planning and building regs fees came in at £5,114, including architect, structural engineer and all that. Everything to do with the drainage and foundations, including pumping in best part of, I think it was 8 cubic metres of concrete we used for the full fill trench foundations. It was pretty much the capacity of what the concrete wagon could actually deliver in one go, but we got that pumped in. It was way too much that you could wheelbarrow it. So all of the concrete for the foundations and the overside came in at about £3,943 and 41 pence. Everything to do with the walls, so that's all of the blockwork, bricks, trench blocks, the cost of the bricky, all of that came in at £7,851. Insulation came in at £3,788. Structural timber work, £5,253. Roofing is certainly an area that we could have saved money on, I think, because that came in at £7,289. I'll tell you how much the actual roof tiles cost in a minute. Windows and doors, again, this is another area that we certainly could have saved money, £7,269, but that was effectively paying a company to just do the whole lot, including fitting. Rendering came in at £4,450. All of the plastering, £3,109. All of the plumbing, electrics and miscellaneous stuff came in at £2,395. The steel work was £840, and waste management, so that's like all the skips and general removal of rubbish. And we've also bundled in the demolition of the old garage into that cost as well, so that came in at £1,750. Now, if you remember, we obviously had that original builder who quoted £64,500, and then we had another builder quoting £120,000 who said that you couldn't even buy the materials for £64,500. We knew that that was nonsense, and here's a complete breakdown of what we've paid tradespeople and what we've paid for actual materials. And the total material cost came in at £26,967, so roughly a third of what that building company had said the materials were going to cost. We've paid about £17,800 to actual tradespeople to do their bits. Obviously, we've got the planning fees that we talked about earlier. There was £1,390 on hiring equipment, and then there was the waste management as well, so that comes in at the £53,000, including the planning fees. But yeah, if you're ever looking at an extension and you're thinking, what are the physical costs of just the materials in that extension? Well, it's that figure there is what it cost us. A quick breakdown of the big ticket items in terms of paying tradespeople. The joiner for the hipped roof was about £1,500. That took about 2 days of work. The plastering amount that I told you earlier included the cost of all the plaster and plasterboard and all that sort of thing. We actually paid the plasterers themselves £2,390. The bricklayer was roughly £3,140. Rendering was £4,450. But that did include the cost of the render as well within that one. And the roofer, definitely the most expensive part of the whole project in terms of the labour rate, that was £4,800, and they were barely on site for, well, certainly no longer than 5 days. So they were charging best part of £1,000 a day for their work. Anyway, such as life, live and learn. We'll have a quick look at the big spends in terms of materials. So the roof tiles, we briefly mentioned that earlier, but all of the tiling for the hipped roof and the lean-to, that came in at £1,228. That included reclaimed tiles for the hipped roof to perfectly match with what was already there, and brand new tiles for the lean-to roof at the back. Other big material spends: wicks, we spent £1,350 there. We spent £1,440 at Screwfix. All of the concrete came in at £1,500. The windows and doors, £7,100, and our building merchant was spent £13,200 there. Thank you, Doves, you did an awesome job. And I know you're going to ask, how come it was £1,500 for concrete? Surely that's vastly different to the figure I gave you earlier. Yeah, I'm wondering that myself now. So there's a breakdown of the costs for the concrete itself. That's what's coming in at the £1,500. But excluding the cost of the concrete itself, we've also got things like digger hire. The concrete pumping was £432. We've got all of the sub-base, the sand, plate compactor, gully, soil pipe work, all of that sort of stuff is what came to an extra £2,124 just on extra bits and pieces on top of the £1,500 for the actual physical concrete. Then the cost for the final fit out of the extension, and honestly I challenge anyone to do a full extension fit out any cheaper than this. Big ticket items: the ensuite cost £1,522. The kitchen came in at £11,035. That's including all appliances, the kitchen itself, absolutely everything connected with the kitchen, £11,035. The final flooring, £2,188. Everything to do with the bedroom, the final fit out cost £977. And then we've got all sorts of other little minor things like the garage, that's just like floor paint, wall paint, stuff like that. But yeah, you get the general idea, and that's where the final fit out came in at £16,094. As I say, if you manage to get a kitchen with all appliances and quartz worktops for a 27 square metre kitchen diner for anything less than about £11,000, you're doing well. And then finally, in terms of the actual breakdown of the fit-out costs, we spent £788 at Wicks. The carpet for the bedroom came in at £838, including fitting. We spent £862 on random things at Screwfix. The bathroom suite itself came in at £1,016. As I say, the flooring was £2,188. The quartz worktops were £2,700 fully fitted. All of the appliances £3,276, and the kitchen itself cost £3,624. Watching chicken thinking that he has a chance of catching pigeons is a never-ending source of entertainment. Hi Nugget. Anyway, so I hope you found that vaguely useful. I know it's complicated and there's a lot to kind of take in from something like this, but hopefully it's clarified things a little bit. I think one of the main takeaways from all of this is that building projects are hard. They are complicated. As I've said before, it's often easier to build an entire new house from scratch than it is to try and add a new bit onto a very old house. To all of the hardworking builders out there, honestly, hats off to you, because I don't envy your job doing this day in and day out in all sorts of weather conditions that just make life a total nightmare. It's certainly been an eye-opener for us, but we would definitely do it again. If you have a decent understanding of how houses are put together, it is certainly possible and not that difficult to manage a project like this, as long as you've got really good tradespeople behind you to do all of the key tasks. Essentially what you're doing is just coordinating everyone and obviously taking on as much of the kind of donkey work as you possibly can to try and keep the whole project just flowing. That is the key thing, is to try and keep everything ticking over so that you don't have any stages where you've got expensive tradespeople twiddling their thumbs. Anyway, I've still got a few more videos planned on the extension project, just going into things like tools that are very useful to own if you're going to be managing a project like this. Also a little bit more about the staging of the project, about what happens when, how long it takes, why if you're getting builders in, you shouldn't expect them to be on site every single day. It just doesn't work like that. And I'll also give you a few tips for finding good builders in the first place, just a few basic things to look out for. And I'll tell you about the nightmare situation that we ran into. We had a really lucky escape, and thankfully we didn't go down the route of getting the builders that we originally found to build this extension. I think that would have gone horribly wrong. But as I say, that's another story for another day. If you can't wait to find out what that was all about, there is a video over on the members zone about it, members.gosforthhandyman.com. But for now, I hope that all makes sense. If you do have any questions, post them down in the comments below. If you are builders, let me know how you cost up jobs. Do you do it on a cost per square metre, or do you kind of drill into every single aspect of it in a lot of detail, or what do you do in terms of actually quoting customers and things like that? Hopefully it's also a little bit of an eye-opener that although a self-build isn't like hugely cheaper than getting builders in, I think the biggest thing from our perspective is having the control over exactly what happens when. And for us, since I'm a complete control freak, that worked out really, really well. Anyway, as I say, don't forget to hit subscribe if you're new to the channel. We'll leave it there for today. Look after each other, be nice to each other, have a fantastic 2023, and we shall see you next time. Tatty bye.